how much is a brand new complete replaced gearbox by Bugatti themselves? That would be the cost for the worst case scenario. If the car itself and the Bugatti build is less than the 1.6 million, then we know that we are winning.
Bugatti may have created a nightmare that neither Mat Armstrong nor Mark McCann expected to face. Two different Veyrons, two separate repair battles, yet both creators ran into the same impossible question. How do you fix a car when the final solution depends on the manufacturer controlling access to it? As viewers compare their experiences, suspicion and controversy continue to grow, with many wondering whether these are isolated cases or signs of a bigger problem. So, why did both men face the same Bugatti nightmare? Two Bugattis, one impossible barrier. The moment Mark McCann's Bugatti Veyron entered the repair spotlight, the story immediately became bigger than another wealthy owner dealing with an expensive supercar. Mark had knowingly purchased a damaged Veyron, reportedly marketed as one of the cheapest examples available, understanding that restoring it would require serious money, specialist knowledge, and patience. He was not discovering an unexpected problem after buying a perfect car. He knew the machine was broken. What he could not have expected was how difficult the path to repairing it would become. That is what made the comparison with Mat Armstrong so difficult to ignore. Mat had already experienced his own highly public battle involving a Bugatti Veyron, and although the specific faults and circumstances were not identical, the broader pattern appeared remarkably familiar. Both projects involved owners prepared to invest heavily in their cars. Both encountered the complicated reality of repairing an ultra-exclusive machine, and in both cases, independent repair seemed to become increasingly difficult once manufacturer-controlled parts, equipment, expertise, or authorization entered the picture. That shared pattern changed the way people viewed Mark's situation. On the surface, this was simply a damaged Veyron being examined by specialists. Beneath that, however, was a more uncomfortable question. Could an owner actually repair a Bugatti independently when the final stages of that repair depended on access controlled through the manufacturer's network? The question became even more significant because Mark's approach appeared different from the image of a creator deliberately looking for confrontation. He had bought a broken car, accepted the financial risk, and pursued professional help. Yet the obstacles still began to resemble those seen in Mat's earlier experience. That did not prove that Bugatti had deliberately treated both creators in the same way, and the available circumstances did not establish that the two cases were identical. The mechanical failures were different, the timelines were different, and the individuals approached their projects differently. Still, the similarity was impossible to dismiss entirely. Two prominent automotive creators had entered separate Bugatti repair stories and seemed to discover that fixing the machine was only part of the challenge. And that distinction mattered. A broken component could be diagnosed, replaced, or rebuilt. A system controlled by limited access was a different kind of problem altogether. The more attention the two stories received, the more viewers began asking whether the badge on the bonnet had changed the rules of ownership. The next discovery threatened to make that question even harder. That was the real mystery now hanging over Mark's Veyron. Was the car's failure simply a difficult engineering problem with an expensive solution? Or had the true nightmare only begun once specialists uncovered what was actually wrong? Was the hidden fault really the biggest problem? Or did the inspection uncover something far more troubling? Who truly controlled what happened next? And why did every possible solution suddenly seem to disappear before anyone could stop it? Let's find out. The hidden cause changed everything. The real turning point in Mark McCann's Bugatti Veyron story came when the gearbox was finally opened and examined by Pascal, an independent transmission specialist based in the Netherlands. Until that moment, the problem could easily have been reduced to a familiar explanation. The clutch had failed, reverse gear was not working correctly, and another expensive repair was needed. The inspection revealed something far more complicated. The damaged clutch was not simply a worn component waiting to be replaced. It had been exposed to extreme heat, leaving the clutch plates burnt and warped. Their precise stack height had been altered, preventing the plates from sitting and working as they should. That distortion helped explain why reverse gear had stopped engaging properly. Then came the discovery that changed the entire diagnosis. The clutch had already been replaced once before. Someone had installed a new clutch, yet that replacement had failed again almost immediately. That raised a critical question. Why would a fresh clutch suffer the same fate so quickly? Pascal's inspection pointed toward the answer hidden deeper inside the gearbox. Tiny pieces of metallic debris, known as swarf, had entered the cooling passages that delivered oil to the clutch. Those passages were essential because the Veyron's clutch operates under extraordinary heat and demands constant cooling. With the channels partly blocked, the oil could not flow as intended. The replacement clutch was therefore exposed to the same underlying danger that had destroyed the original one. That discovery transformed the repair from a simple parts replacement into a problem of cause and effect. Replacing the clutch alone could create the appearance of progress while leaving the real danger untouched. The same contamination could remain inside the system. The cooling could fail again, and the newly installed clutch could be destroyed once more. In a Veyron gearbox, that was not a minor risk. The transmission's sensitivity meant that a small amount of contamination could have consequences far beyond its size. The implications were difficult to ignore. The earlier repair may have addressed the visible failure without eliminating the condition that caused it. Whether that happened because the contamination was missed or the original problem was never fully understood, the result was the same. A replacement part had failed because the deeper fault remained. For Mark, the discovery was both a breakthrough and a warning. The true cause had finally become clearer, but identifying the problem did not automatically make the solution simple. The gearbox now needed to be repaired with far greater precision than anyone might have expected, because the next mistake could repeat the entire nightmare. Something still refused to add up. Why had the previous repair missed the real culprit? What unseen damage was quietly spreading beyond the clutch? And when Pascal dug even deeper, would the Veyron reveal an even costlier secret hiding where nobody expected it all along? Keep watching. The finished repair still stalled. The most frustrating moment in Mark McCann's Bugatti Veyron repair arrived after the main mechanical problem had seemingly been solved. Pascal had identified the contamination, dealt with the damaged components, and worked toward rebuilding the gearbox. Yet the repair was still not ready to return to the car. The reason was a critical procedure that could not simply be skipped. The new clutch components needed to be carefully bedded in before installation. That process was far more important than it might sound. Fresh clutch material can release tiny fibers during its initial operation. In a normal situation, those particles must be managed in a controlled environment before the gearbox is installed. Allowing them to circulate inside the assembled transmission could contaminate the same oil passages that had already contributed to the earlier clutch failure. In other words, a repair intended to solve the original problem could accidentally recreate it. This was why Pascal's work involved far more than making replacement parts. Since Bugatti would not supply key components, custom clutch plates, gaskets, and seals had to be engineered. Creating them was a remarkable achievement, but the new parts still needed precise testing and preparation to ensure the rebuilt gearbox was properly protected. The specialized equipment required for that process was connected to Ricardo, the British engineering company associated with the Veyron's dual-clutch gearbox. The situation became particularly difficult because the facility and the relevant test rig were reportedly located only around 15 minutes from Mark's home. The equipment existed, The technology had been designed for the kind of system Mark was trying to repair, yet proximity did not equal access. Mark contacted Ricardo directly, but the response placed the matter back within Bugatti's after-sales structure. That created the central contradiction at the heart of the entire repair. Mark was prepared to pay for the required service, while the equipment needed to complete the job was reportedly nearby. But access still depended on approval through Bugatti. From one perspective, the restriction could be understood as a manufacturer protecting highly specialized technology and ensuring that a complex transmission was handled correctly. From another, it created an extraordinary situation in which an independent owner could perform extensive specialist work but still remain unable to complete the final stage safely. The gearbox was no longer simply a destroyed component waiting for repair. It had become a finished project trapped behind one final requirement. And with the solution apparently so close, the question became even more difficult to ignore. Why was the final step still out of reach? Everything points toward a solution, so who keeps the final door locked? Why would world-class equipment sit unused while the Bugatti waits? What hidden rule matters more than repairing a multi-million-dollar machine, and who benefits from that decision before anyone can finish the repair safely? Stay with us. Two creators, same Bugatti barrier. The comparison between Mark McCann and Mat Armstrong became impossible for viewers to ignore once Mark's repair story began following a path that felt strangely familiar. The two men had not bought the same car, encountered the same mechanical failure, or followed identical timelines. Their personalities and approaches were also different. Mark had knowingly purchased a damaged Bugatti Veyron and pursued an independent repair with specialist assistance, while Mat's earlier public experience with a Veyron had unfolded under its own separate circumstances. Yet the similarities appeared at a different level. In both stories, the challenge extended beyond the question of whether a skilled engineer could understand a complicated machine. The real pressure point emerged when independent repair collided with systems controlled through the manufacturer and its approved network. Parts, specialist equipment, dealer routing, and authorization requirements became central to the process. A mechanical problem could be diagnosed, but completing the repair could still depend on access that the owner did not directly control. That was the connection viewers began to recognize. Mark and Mat were not partners working on one shared Bugatti project, and their experiences could not honestly be treated as identical. The specific faults were different, the circumstances were different, and the two creators approached their situations in different ways. Still, both stories appeared to raise the same broader question. How much freedom does an owner really have when repairing an ultra-exclusive car requires resources tied to the manufacturer? The fact that both situations were documented publicly made the comparison even more powerful. Instead of remaining private disputes between owners, specialists, and a luxury manufacturer, the repair battles unfolded before large online audiences. Every delay, unanswered request, technical obstacle, and attempted solution became part of a much wider conversation about ownership. Viewers began connecting the two stories, treating them as possible examples of a larger problem rather than isolated cases involving unusually complicated vehicles. That interpretation, however, remained open to debate. The similarities did not prove that Bugatti had deliberately targeted either creator, nor did they establish that the manufacturer's policies were designed specifically to block independent YouTubers. There could be legitimate technical and safety reasons for controlling access to specialized systems. A Veyron's engineering is exceptionally complex, and the consequences of an incorrect repair could be serious. Yet, the controversy existed because the outcome could look similar from the outside. Different owners, different faults, and different journeys appeared to meet the same barrier between independent repair and manufacturer-controlled access. Mark's calmer approach made that comparison even more difficult to dismiss. If the result could look familiar despite such different circumstances, then the real story might not be about one creator at all. It might be about what happens when ownership reaches the limits of independence. Why do two completely different Bugatti stories keep pointing toward the same hidden obstacle? Coincidence? Flawed engineering? Or something owners rarely discover until it's too late? What unexpected pattern begins emerging once more? Veyron experiences are placed side by side. Stay glued. Every possible solution failed. By this point, Mark McCann's Bugatti problem had become a search for an escape route. The independent specialist had worked on the gearbox, custom components had been created, and the technical cause of the earlier failures had been identified. Yet the repair still needed the correct testing process. With the normal route blocked, Mark began looking elsewhere, and what followed showed just how difficult the problem had become. One option was to create a completely new test rig. In theory, that could have removed the need to depend on existing equipment or approval. In practice, the cost estimates were staggering. Quotes reportedly reached around €300,000, €400,000, and in some cases as much as £500,000 for a custom one-off solution. The irony was impossible to miss. Mark could potentially spend enough money building equipment for the repair that he might have been better off purchasing a working Veyron from the beginning. That financial reality made the situation even more difficult to understand. Mark had already accepted the cost of owning a broken Bugatti. He had sought specialist help and appeared willing to pay for the necessary work. The obstacle was not simply a refusal to spend money. The problem was finding an available solution that was technically compatible with the Veyron and accessible without creating an entirely new engineering project. Then an unexpected possibility emerged through JCB. The construction equipment manufacturer works extensively with complex hydraulic systems and has experience with advanced engineering projects. Mark visited one of its facilities and saw an operation built around extraordinary levels of cleanliness and precision. Filtration systems could remove particles smaller than the width of a human hair, while components underwent ultrasonic cleaning and pressure testing before leaving the facility. The visit offered an important lesson about the Veyron's gearbox. Its sensitivity was not theoretical. A tiny contaminant could potentially create a much larger problem inside a system operating with extremely precise tolerances. For a moment, JCB appeared to offer a possible path forward. If its engineering systems were advanced enough, perhaps its equipment could be adapted for the Bugatti's requirements. That possibility, however, quickly encountered another barrier. The electronics were different. The hydraulic control systems were different. The oil specifications were different. JCB could genuinely explore the problem and appear willing to help, but willingness alone could not make incompatible equipment suitable for the Veyron. Once again, the route closed. The pattern was becoming difficult to ignore. Mark was not simply refusing to look beyond Bugatti. Independent specialists had tried. Alternative engineering solutions had been considered. Custom equipment had been priced. Outside expertise had been explored. Yet every option failed for a different reason, leaving the same problem in place. The challenge was no longer finding someone capable of engineering a solution. It was finding one that was compatible, authorized, and actually accessible. JCB had world-class engineers, custom rigs were possible, and money was no longer the only obstacle. So why did every path still fail? What hidden requirement kept blocking the transmission? When the final remaining option demanded the impossible, would Mark risk everything to try it? Stay tuned. 15 minutes from freedom. By the end of Mark McCann's Bugatti Veyron ordeal, the major mechanical repairs seemed nearly complete. The clutch issue had been resolved, the gearbox was being rebuilt, and custom parts had filled gaps left by Bugatti. On paper, the hardest work appeared finished. In reality, the final step still carried the greatest risk. The rebuilt clutch could not simply be installed and driven away. It needed the correct bedding-in process on specialized equipment before being returned to the car. Without that controlled procedure, the new components could potentially release material into the gearbox and contaminate the same oil passages connected to the earlier failure. The mechanical work could therefore be completed correctly and still be placed in danger by skipping the final stage. That was where the story reached its most extraordinary point. The specialized test rig associated with Ricardo was reportedly located only around 15 minutes from Mark's home. The equipment existed. The technology was designed for the kind of complex transmission involved. Mark was prepared to pay for the necessary assistance. Yet the distance between the Veyron and the solution was no longer measured in miles. The problem was access. Ricardo's after-sales support was routed through Bugatti, meaning the approval required to use the relevant equipment remained tied to the manufacturer. Mark needed the rig. The facility required the appropriate authorization, and Bugatti had not provided a straightforward route that allowed the independent repair to reach its final stage. Physically, the answer was close. Institutionally, it remained out of reach. That contradiction raised the biggest question in the entire story. Was this simply the unavoidable reality of maintaining such a complex and exclusive machine? Bugatti could argue that its specialized systems require strict control to prevent costly mistakes. From the owner's perspective, however, the situation looked very different. The gearbox had been rebuilt, the specialists had completed the work, and the money was available. Yet the final step still depended on access beyond the owner's control. That was why Mat Armstrong's earlier Bugatti experience continued to cast such a long shadow over Mark's story. The two men had reached the problem through different roads, but both appeared to encounter the same broader question about independent repair. And so, the Veyron remained trapped in an extraordinary contradiction. The solution was nearby, technically possible, and financially available, yet still inaccessible. If an owner can possess the car, the money, the experts, and the determination, but not the final permission, then the real question becomes impossible to avoid. Who truly controls a Bugatti after it has been sold? So, what do you think? Is Bugatti protecting engineering standards or making independent repair nearly impossible? We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more.